Hello. This is CISS216. I hope you already know that. Today, we're going to talk about your semester project. And it's not too early to start thinking about your semester project because we have learned a lot so far in this class. We have learned how to make some web pages that have links, have images, and have text, which again, for most web pages, that's typically what they're comprised of. We've also introduced us to CSS, which we are not finished with. No, we're nowhere near finished with. However, with CSS, if you build CSS correctly, then you can take CSS and apply it to every page on your site. And then by altering just one CSS file, you can change the look of the entire site. So we'll be going through this examples of creating CSS, and we're not done with HTML either. But we are at a good point, at least a point for you to start thinking about web pages and websites and designing a good one and thinking of topics for one. My suggestion is just pick a topic that interests you. If you're going to work on it, you might as well have a little bit of fun anyhow. All right. First of all, we're going to design the website. In other words, we're not going to sit down and just bash out a series of web pages. We're actually going to think about and plan our website. All right. And we're going to follow a procedure, a methodology that is described in Canvas. See, I think you can view it in Canvas. We have a little bit of an overview of the project. We have the design, and then we have the final submission of the project. So this project you're going to do in two pieces. The design of it is due at the end of October. So design is due on October 30th. And the project itself, the final project, that is all the web pages, is due on December 11th. Might sound a long way off, but we're already 5 weeks through the class, and therefore time flies. And it's my experience anyhow, especially the second half of the semester. Once we get past week 8, that flies by to the end. So start thinking about this now and start working on your design now. Now, what do I mean when I say a website is that we design the website? Synonymous words we could say is that we're planning a website. All right. Because we can look at websites and we can decide if we think that they're well designed or not. That's part of your lab that's due next week, is to look at websites and pick a couple that are well designed, pick a couple that you do not think are well designed. So let's Google well-designed websites. We don't have to agree with this, but let's see what Google has to say about it. All right, let's look at this one. It's RCA Records. Hope there's a link to it. There we go. RCA Records. If we look, it has a nice menu here that we can go to the home page. We can go to news. Check out releases, articles, and so on. Let's look at this one, see what they have to say. I have some examples here. Let's look at a few more. Airbnb. Let's go to that one. Now, let's define in more detail what it means when we say a website is well designed. First of all, we don't only mean that it looks good. A well-designed website should look good. It should be visually appealing. I will say that. But being visually appealing in itself is not enough for a website to be well designed. We have to come down to figuring out what the goals of the organization are and the goals of the individuals visiting the site and see how well the website satisfies those goals. For example, if I went to an Airbnb site, I probably want to book a room somewhere. All right. So let's say I want to book a room in for a trip a week away. Let's say I pick the dates. It can show me a list of things that are available. That was pretty easy to do, right? And if you think about why you would come to an Airbnb, you're coming to an Airbnb to find someplace to go, a destination. All right. There's filters here to say that, well, we want an entire home. We don't want to pay more than $300 a day. And we'll pay at least $100 a day. Oh, $1,100, $100. And we need 2 bedrooms because I'm taking the whole family, and so on. And I'll show you those that meet that requirement. What I'm surprised that it doesn't have is allowing you to search for a specific location. Maybe that's what this is. No, that goes along with that. Interesting. If we're going to judge whether we think this is a well-designed website or not, we have to figure out, is it allowing me to do what I've come to this site for? And you can make the judgment yourself if this is something that would be useful for you booking a room or booking a house if you were going on vacation somewhere. Here's a website I think is very well designed. That's good old Google. Now, why do I think it's well designed? It's very plain, very simple, not a lot to it. Doesn't look particularly attractive, but it isn't ugly. I would say it's somewhat visually appealing. Well, think of why users come to Google. Users come to Google to search and to find something. All right, so we want to find out information about HTML, let's say. So we come here and we type HTML, hit return, and we get a good list of websites that are related to HTML. In fact, even before we hit enter, if we type in CS, it shows us CSS. Once more, it was smart enough to put CSS on the top of the list as soon as I typed in a C. I find that interesting. How do you think it knew to do that? It knew how to do that because we just searched for HTML. So if you just search for HTML and you search for something that starts with the C, there's a really good chance that you're searching for CSS. So this allows users to achieve their goals, that is, find the information that they're looking for, and does it very quickly, very efficiently, and without a lot of stuff in their way. Now, another site that's similar to Google is Yahoo, because it also allows us to search. But there's more other stuff on this page. Well, which is better, Google or Yahoo? Well, it depends on what you're looking after. If you're looking for sort of a newspaper type experience where you can see the top news stories of the day and, oh yeah, you can search for something if you're interested in something, then maybe Yahoo is preferred. If you are only interested in searching, then probably Google is preferred. All right, so it all comes down to goals. It's not just enough to say that it looks visually attractive. We have to consider the goals of the user and the goals of the organization that made the site in determining whether the site is well designed. All right, so let's look at what your task is. Project overview. I'm not going to read this word for word. You're going to create a small website about whatever topic you like, assuming that is appropriate for a college class. Look beyond the scope of this class if you want. So if there's things that you want to do that we have not or will not covered in this class, you're welcome to give them a try. There may be an opportunity to develop a site for a nonprofit organization. That has not come to be this semester. All right. Your website should contain, your project should contain 6 to 8 pages with a reasonable amount of content for a web page. What I mean is don't have 6 web pages, each with 1 sentence on it. That's not adequate content for a web page. The goal of the project is to develop a site that is technically sound, that your HTML and CSS work the way that they're supposed to, that you've created the tags correctly, that you've used the appropriate tags, that you've not done things like forget ending tags. So in other words, your code works the way that you intended it to. Well designed, and by well designed, it meets the needs of the users that you said were going to be using this site. And finally, effectively communicates the intended message of the site. All right, let's get a little bit more specific into the design now. This design is going to consist of a Word document that's going to have 4 sections in it. Now, I'll give you the advice that one of my professors gave me. Make it obvious to me, the teacher, so I can see what you were thinking about when you developed this document. So, this document is to have 5 sections: strategy, scope, structure, wireframe, and prototype. Prototype doesn't appear in the Word document. The prototype is actually 3 HTML, CSS pages. We'll talk more about the prototype next week. A prototype is sort of a rough draft of the pages on a website. So it's not complete, but it's not totally complete, but it looks a fair amount of the work has been done, and it is shaping up, and it is somewhat complete. So your written is going to have your written in Word is going to have 4 sections. So make it easy for me. When you create your Word document, put those 4 sections on the top of the page, within the page. So strategy. I can type. Scope. Structure. And wireframe. This way, if I'm not sure of what is in your document, I can at a glance see what section that you're writing about in your document. Just helps me go through and identify all the sections and make sure that you have everything in it. It definitely will help your grade if you do this. All right, so let's see what's in each of these sections. And we might even put some subheadings in. Subsection, you're going to define the goals for your site. Define your audience. Define goals both for you and for the audience. And you're going to have you're going to have several things in here. You're going to have a description of the site's purpose, 3 user personas, a prioritized list of 3 goals for the project, a prioritized goals for each of the 3 personas. So go in Word. Description. Make it a 2nd level heading. Personas. Site goals. Persona goals. All right. So under description, you're going to write a paragraph, a short paragraph talking about the general topic of your page, who it's geared towards, the kind of information that you're going to have on the page. For example, let's say I was doing a site about Lorain Community College's CISS programs. So I might say this site is about Lorain Community College's CISS programs. It is geared towards students that might be interested in enrolling in those programs. And you go on from there to sort of fill out the description and talk more in detail about the kind of stuff that's going to be on the site and so on. Under personas, what are personas? Personas are sample users. They're fictitious users that are going to, that you think are going to be interested in the site content. So let's look up and let's Google web personas. Web persona is a summary of the characteristics of the web, the characteristics, needs, motivations, and an environment of a typical website user. So here's some examples of a web persona. Persona 1, George. George is a 60-year-old violin teacher who accesses the internet from his desktop over broadband. He's never purchased online before, preferring to place orders by phone. Persona 2, Georgina. Georgina is a 29-year-old ad exec who is connected to the internet all day. She confidently uses her MacBook, iPad, and Android phone to access the web, whatever is at hand. Interesting that she would have a MacBook and an iPad, but not use an iPhone. But that's another that's another topic. Now, if you can imagine these typical users, if these two were typical users accessing the site, then they may have very different goals and needs. So let's think about the personas of people that might want to visit our site. I'm going to say persona 1, and I'm going to create a name for them. Mike. Student enrolled in another college thinking of transferring to Loring Community College. Persona 2 might be Annette. High school student, high school junior, let's say, trying to decide where to enroll for CISS. And persona 3 could be Juan, high school graduate, trying to decide what they should major in. These are all three hypothetical people that represent people out there. I mean, high school juniors are in the process of selecting a college and selecting a major. And if the person knows that they're interested in computer information systems, then very well, they might look to a website like this to try to get information about what they should enroll in. Sometimes students need to transfer or want to transfer for whatever reason. Maybe the college they're attending now is just too expensive and they're looking for a less expensive option. Maybe they've been there and they're not satisfied with that college's computer information systems program. Maybe they're majoring in something else and decided they want to go to a CISS program and are interested in Loring Communities, and so on. All these are different people who are going to have different goals, right? Now, you can really go wild with these personas. And here's an example. I hope. Still a little blurry. All right, here's another one. They've gone so far as to take stock photographs or photographs of their friends and do that. This might seem corny, but really it's sort of good because it really gives you the perspective of the persona. The more detail that you can create about them, the better that you can understand their goals and needs and come up with a website that's well designed. In this case, they've given an age, occupation, status, location, what tier they are. In other words, are they really interested in this topic or only slightly interested in this topic? What their focus is, what are they motivated by, what are their goals, what makes them frustrated, and so on down the line. Now, you don't have to go to quite all this, but it's good if you have demographic information about them, that is age, location, things like that. It's good to actually use a photo. It's good to give them a name and talk about what they're interested in and what they're frustrated about and so on. So this might be sort of the full-blown persona, and it's great if you achieve this, but do more than just this. Put more details in. All right, the goals of the site. Attract more CISS majors. What's good about that is I could say something like give information about CISS program. That is very not specific. I don't know how to measure that. Am I going to give my users a quiz to see if they've learned certain information or what? Attract more CISS majors is measurable. After we put up the site, we can look a year after, 2 years after, 5 years after, and see if our CISS programs have grown or not. Simplify transfer process. Would be a goal of the site, let's say. And then finally, maybe attract early college students. The high school students that are here on campus. It takes some high school courses here and some college courses here. So this might be my goals as the creator of this site. I then give 3 goals for each of the personas. So persona 1, Mike. Is going to want to need to know the procedure for transferring. In other words, how do you go about transferring? How do you go about finding out if your credit's transferred and so on? Students might also need to know course descriptions. To help them work with a counselor in coming up with their transferring. They're getting credit for these courses and transferring stuff into it. So that is something that the transfer student might be interested in. Finally, they might be interested in general education requirements. What about stuff outside of the major? What are CISS students required to take outside of the CISS program? Now, a lot of times students will come to me saying they can't think of 3 personas or they can't think of 3 goals. If you're in that position and you're stuck, talk to me about it. Because just about any problem that you think about, you can find 3 groups of people that would be interested in visiting the website. Think of creating a website for a restaurant. You have maybe people that are going to have a special occasion. That would be one group of people. Hey, we want to have a birthday party. Is your restaurant suitable for that? You'd have people that are already familiar with the restaurant. All right, what's the weekly specials? Gee, I like their steak special. What day of the week is that being offered this week? Finally, you may have people that have never visited the restaurant before and just want to get a sense of how much everything costs, what the menu is like, if certain dietary restrictions are met, and so on. So you can come up with, for just about any project, 3 personas and 3 goals. If you'd rather put the goals as part of the persona up here, you're welcome to do that. All right. The goals are what we want to achieve. They're not how we're going to achieve it. Simplify this should be. My eyes still aren't 100%. Now, the goals are what we want to achieve and what we want our users to be able to achieve. The scope is the particular thing that the particular items that we're going to put on our site that are going to help satisfy those goals. So, find course description. That might be one of the goals of this persona 1. In the scope section, we might have something like list of all CISS programs. And or list of all CISS courses. We might have a list of all CISS programs and graduation requirements. We might have statistics of graduate placement. That certainly might help any of these people decide if LCC is the right for them, because if LCC has a good record as far as placing their graduates, then that might lead these students to believe that LCC is a good place. Testimony of employers of LCCC grads. Testimony of LCCC grads. Description of transfer procedure. And you're going to have a list of things like this. I'm not going to formulate a full list, but I have about a half dozen of them. You'll probably have, or you should probably have about 20 or so. And each one of the things on your scope list should match up with at least one of the goals that you defined, either for a persona or for the site. Secondly, each one of your goals should have at least one item in the scope section. So it needs to match going in both directions. If I have an item on the scope list, bio of professors, does that satisfy any of the goals? If so, then yeah, that would be a great item to have on the site. If it doesn't really satisfy any of the goals, then maybe that's not something that's required. So if you have an item on the scope and it doesn't really satisfy any goals, then remove it. There's no sense having it because that will only clutter up the website with unnecessary information. Likewise, if one of the goals of this person is find out the procedure for transferring, we better have something on the list that addresses transfers. All right. So they should match up. Every goal should have at least one item on the scope. Every item on the scope should relate to at least one goal. Put short, the goals are what we want to achieve. The scope are how we want to achieve that. How do we want to achieve those goals? By listing the information that we're going to put on the site. Now, the next two things are going to be drawings. And you can do the drawings in Word. You can also draw on any software tool and simply paste in the drawing. Worst case scenario, draw on a sheet of paper and take a photo of it and include the photo in there. So I'll go something like this, paint. The structure area is where I'm going to draw my home page. Now we have 3 programs here at LCC. We have web development. We have software development. And we have networking development or networking engineering. Maybe we've decided that we are going to want to have a page for each of those 3 degree areas. Maybe then we have a page for transfers. And so on down the line. Maybe under web, we have a list of the courses. And maybe testimonies of students and employees. Employers, rather. So we're going to come up with a chart like this that shows the structure of the website. In the structure section, this is where we decide how we're going to organize all this stuff in the scope and come up with some ideas of how those pages are going to be structured. So you draw that. I'm going to save it on the desktop. Maybe. I'll just save it in documents. There we go. And we can call it structure.png. And then we can go in and insert picture, this device. And just insert it in there. We should then have a little write-up about why we chose this. Why did we choose to break things down by degree program? Is that the only way we could break down this data? No. We could actually have, instead of having each CISS program on the second level, we could have high school students, college students, transfer students, and organize the information that way. It takes judgment to look at this list of requirements and come up with the best organization. It's like if we had a sporting goods store. We could divide our topic many different ways. We could say, well, we're going to have men's apparel and women's apparel and children's apparel. Or we could say, we have a section for tennis apparel, a section for golf apparel, a section for basketball apparel, and so on down the line. We have to get in the head of the personas and say what is going to be most useful for those people. What is going to work best for those people. We can look for a more elaborate structure chart. And there's an example. Homepage, category, subcategory, and so on. That's a very generic one, but I think you get the idea. The second part is a wireframe, and that's the generic layout of individual pages. Here would be an example of a wireframe. Unfortunately, that's not very readable. Here's an example. I hope it'll be better size. But the same one. It is. It's a sketch just like this. It's going to identify stuff that's going to be on a page. I don't know why I can't find a good example. Wireframe chart is probably the problem. There you go. I'm not doing this on purpose, folks. I like the way that looks, so I keep opening it. And unfortunately, it is always too small. Oh, here's a, yeah, okay, this is going to be a good one. I can feel it. There we go. We might, for example, have a menu over here, a video here, and so on, and the links for social media down here. So if this was my restaurant's webpage, for example, I might have the name of the restaurant here. I might have a video showing here. I might have the options for the website here. I might have 2 pictures of that, and I might have the social media, and I might have the ability to search like that. But a wireframe, these should be labeled, by the way. And the wireframe should describe, just in very rough terms, what each of the pages is going to look like. You don't need one wireframe for every page. Pages can share wireframes. So yeah, you might only have one wireframe for your entire site, or maybe you have one wireframe for the home page and one wireframe for the rest of the pages. You can get an idea of some other ones looking through here. It's just sort of a layout of what a given page is going to look like. And again, same thing with this. You know, with the structure chart, you're going to say why you did it. For the wireframe, you're going to lay it out and say why you laid it out that way. But you'd include the drawing right in here. All right, that leaves us with one more section of the design, and that is not going to be contained in the Word document. That is going to be the prototype, which we will discuss next week. All right, are there any questions? If not, we will see you next week.